Hi, everyone. Welcome into the Shadow Box. I am Carlise, your host. I am your grief and trauma coach and your shadow work guide. Today with us, we have Shannon Roane. Shannon is the founder of J&J Journals. This is a journal and a brand that is dedicated to guiding women through grief, healing, and personal growth. She is also a peer-to-peer mentor with the Heartstrings, and she's going to tell us a lot more about that. And you will see how this fits into her journey so perfectly. So, Shannon, thank you for coming into the Shadow Box and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you so much, Carlise. Once again, I'm Shannon Roane, and I'm the founder of J&J Journals. And what really started me on my grief journey was my pregnancy loss back in 2019, March 26th of 2019, when I experienced a ruptured ectopic pregnancy that led to emergency surgery. During that time, I really just didn't know how to process those emotions, so I started to journal. And that was truly my outlet. And that's what founded J&J Journals, is my personal story of healing.
Yeah. And you found a way of release. Like you said, that was your outlet. And
Yeah,
that was the better way for you to release it because a lot of times ectopic pregnancies, miscarriages, things of that nature, they're so silent, right? It
right,
only happens or it's only discussed in the home, maybe discussed amongst the partners, but even as we'll discuss too later, how the dynamics in the relationship of, your partner, they grieve differently, right? And
absolutely.
so we don't know how that actually transfers into being able to express yourself with this, right?
Right.
So let's go ahead and talk us through your ectopic journey and what that was like for you.
Yeah, so like I said, it was March 26th of 2019. I just remember waking up that morning, started to feel some cramping, mainly on the left side. Um, for me, I just thought maybe it's, just normal pregnancy cramps. This is my first pregnancy, so I didn't really know what to think. So I did call in to my OBGYN and just let them know what was going on. So they had scheduled me for an appointment about 3:30 p.m. that same day to come in and just to, get checked out, to double check everything. So I sat down, I ate my breakfast, and they told me, if you have any spotting or bleeding, to call us back. So I went to the restroom because at this point I was ready to head out the door to go to work. So um, I noticed bleeding, and I called back, and they said, okay, well, they asked if I was having any other pains, like shoulder pain, and they said, well, a little bit, and I didn't think anything of it. So they said, I think you may be experiencing what we call an ectopic pregnancy. I really never heard of it up
Yeah.
until that point. So they said, we want you to go to the nearest emergency room. I'll call the L&D, the labor and delivery department, and let them know that you're on the way. So they will be expecting you, and they'll just check everything out just to rule that out. So at this point, things changed. It went from just having a regular appointment at 3:30 to, okay, we want you to go to the emergency room. So I went to the emergency room, and they started to, do the ultrasound. Doctors and nurses, they were in and out of the room. They were asking questions. And I just remember just laying on the table during that ultrasound, and they turned the screen away from me. So in my mind, ultrasound, you usually, should be able to see what's going on, but they turned the screen. So that's when I'm like, okay, maybe there is something because they turned the screen. But at the time, the lady and I, we were having normal conversations. My husband and I, we had a vacation coming up. So we were just talking about my upcoming vacation. Uh, and I went back to the room, and I remember them coming in and saying, well, we're trying to get in touch with your doctor. They couldn't get in touch with my OBGYN. So they had another on call OBGYN come in. And that's when they delivered the news that it was an ectopic pregnancy. It had already ruptured, and I was having internal bleeding. And they said, I need you to call the next of kin. We have to schedule you for surgery today. So I need you to have a next of kin as soon as they can get here. And that's when everything just, I really wasn't processing what was going on in that moment. I think I was just in denial. I was in shock. So there wasn't really any emotion.
Yeah.
Um, just like, okay. So I call my husband. I'm like, hey, I think you need to get here like now because they said I have to go into surgery today.
Yeah.
Um, so that's really how that day went. It was very traumatic. I just remember getting into the room. They wheeled me into the room. And I remember on the way, as they were wheeling me into the room, there were two people around my age at that time wheeling me into the room. So we were talking about things from like the 90s, and they were just trying to keep me in good spirits. Um, and I just remember telling them, just make sure I'm okay, make sure I make it out okay. I
Yeah.
had never been through surgery before. So it was, for me, a scary moment. And just going into that room, it was cold. There were bright lights. I remember seeing kind of like computer screens around the table, and it's just this thin, small table.
Yeah.
And that was the last that I remember because they put the mask on you, tell you count down from 10, and that was it. And I remember waking up, and I still couldn't process in that moment what had happened.
Yeah. And that is a I mean, that's a normal response to something that you don't know about, you know? And just to give some context to ectopic pregnancies, ectopic pregnancy is when the baby implants somewhere outside of your uterus. So
Yep.
this could be your fallopian tube, it could be your ovary, it could be in your abdominal cavity, it could be anywhere in your body, so to speak, in that lower region, which it doesn't have enough supply or it poses such a risk to the mother that if it ruptures, what it does is it makes you bleed out. It will set up an infection. So very rarely, very rarely are ectopic pregnancies even to full term. And I mean that's like I'm not going to give a percentage, but I want to say like a 1% chance, right?
Hmm.
But it's even more fatal for the mother if she were to try to continue on or go further into the pregnancy.
Right.
So that's the context of ectopic pregnancies, but no one really talks about it. So you're going in here and you're like, okay, ectopic pregnancy. When they were telling you that, did they like tell you like the baby is not going to make it? Like we have to terminate this. Is that what they told you?
Yes, they gave me, that information that, we wouldn't be able to save this pregnancy. They said once we go in, we'll know whether or not we're able to save the tube. And that's after the surgery is when I found out they did have to remove my left fallopian tube.
Mm, okay. And that was another processing because here you go losing a part of your body that is also associated with reproduction, but
Right.
gratefully for women, we have two of them,
Hmm.
right? So, how did you, when you started to process the loss of your baby and the loss of your fallopian tube, would you say that you were grieving both at the same time or you didn't know what to grieve?
I really didn't know what to grieve at the time. The wave of grief and the emotions hit me after I was discharged. I remember we were sitting in the parking lot at CVS because they had called in prescriptions for pain medicine,
Mhm.
and it was raining really hard that night. So we're just sitting in the car and we're waiting, for the medicine to be ready. And it hit me in that moment.
Yeah,
Everything that I just went through, what just happened, and I just remember just crying just so hard in that moment while I'm sitting in the parking lot at CVS waiting for the pain medicine.
yeah, yeah. Um, and how was the dynamic? Did husband really kind of know what was going on, or was he just kind of more trying to console you?
He was trying to console me in the moment. I don't think he really could process what was going on either. Like I said, I mean, I called him at work and I'm like, you need to get here, as soon as possible. So I think for him, it was just being strong for me in the moment and being there for me. So he didn't really process everything at that time. It took him a while for him to really grieve in his own way.
Yeah. And so time kind of a little bit of time went past,
Mhm.
and then you found yourself in another grieving space.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
It was 4 months after the ectopic pregnancy. I lost my aunt to pancreatic cancer. And I was very close with her, my aunt Connie. She was really like a second mom to me. It's my mom's sister. And when I say those two are like two peas in a pod, they were always together. So I was always with my aunt. Um, and we lost her to pancreatic cancer. It was in July of 2019. So it was just 4 months after, grieving the pregnancy loss. And
Mhm.
now I'm losing someone that's very, very close to me. So it was a very, very tough time, emotionally, mentally, physically for me,
Yeah.
where I was in a very deep, almost depression space. I felt like I didn't know how to get out. I didn't know who to talk to about it.
Mhm.
And like I said, that's where I started to write. I started to journal.
Yeah. And was it during this time that you were in touch with the program at the hospital, or was it later down the line?
That was later down the line. I reached out to them probably in 2020. Um, and, I had another, and, I know we may get to this, but I did have another loss in 2020. So I reached out to them after that second loss because I felt like I needed some additional help.
Yeah.
While I was journaling, that was helpful. I needed some additional help.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and track back into there because you had a whole fertility journey that was going
Hmm.
on. So let's walk us through that journey and just fill us in on how tedious it was for you.
Yeah, so like I said, after my aunt passed in 2019, we were trying again. We had the green light to go ahead and try again. So January 2nd of 2020, we had a miscarriage. So we went in to check, get everything checked out, had an ultrasound, and the doctor comes in and it's those words, "I'm so sorry." And that's what I remember from that appointment is, "I'm so sorry. There isn't a heartbeat." Um, and those words kind of stuck with me for quite some time. And here we are again grieving another pregnancy loss. So from that point on, I did reach out to a fertility clinic just to make sure everything is okay. Because at this point, we've had a second loss, and I just wanted to make sure everything was okay. So I went through all of the tests that you can go through at a fertility clinic, and everything was fine.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything there with myself or my husband. Everything was perfectly normal. So there wasn't an answer. And just to go back to the ectopic pregnancy, I wanted answers. I needed to know why. I needed someone to give me an answer. And I was told it was just a fluke.
Mm.
It was just a fluke. And I didn't have answers from the ectopic. I didn't have answers from the miscarriage. So it really left me, blaming myself for thinking, could I have done something different? What did I do wrong? So I was doing the blame game with myself,
Yeah.
just trying to put a pin in something. There has to be something because this just can't just happen like this, not once, but twice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's so many different facets to that process of, of becoming pregnant, the implantation, all these different facets that happen. I mean, there's chromosomes, there's things that are way deeper that we understand that causes miscarriages, that causes, all these different defects before,
Hmm.
before we can even comfortably say that we're pregnant, right?
Right.
And so I how far into this did you start to kind of understand that it wasn't your fault? Or do you still find yourself blaming yourself?
I think after the miscarriage, that's when I started to reach out for professional help. So I did go to see a therapist. So I was talking to a therapist to just kind of work through that process, what was holding me back internally, with me blaming myself. We also talked and worked on setting boundaries. And I also, through the hospital,
Hmm.
they had this program, Heartstrings, which later on I am now a volunteer mentor. So I reached out through this program. It's a free program through the hospital where they pair you up with someone who has had a similar loss. So I was paired up with someone who also had an ectopic pregnancy.
Okay.
So for me, that was the perfect opportunity to talk to someone else about this because I did not know anyone else. So I was sitting here just suffering in silence
Yeah.
because I didn't know anyone else who's been through this. So
Yeah.
this program has definitely been instrumental in my healing journey as well. To just to be partnered with someone who knows exactly what you're going through or what you went through.
Yeah. Definitely. And I mean, giving you words to it, putting a voice to it,
Hmm.
because that silence of the inside, of course, is going to tell you, oh, there's something that I did wrong. There's something that, my body is not enough, or, all of these things. And when you learn that there are others that have experienced this, it's kind of like, okay, we probably all don't have the same issue, or we don't have some sort of malfunction. This is
Hmm.
really something that happens. But to use the word fluke, I think that was kind of probably like a gut wrencher there, because it's like, fluke. That's a horrible bedside word, right?
Right. I'm like,
That's
what?
a horrible word. Um, so, um, when we talk about your fertility journey, and because you didn't have to get like in vitro anything like that, right?
No, we ended up conceiving on our own. We
Okay.
did go through, like I said, the fertility specialist, and we had a plan. So they were talking about IUI, um, that process, but we
Yeah.
just didn't have to go through anything because we were able to conceive on our own. So um, we were truly blessed to be able to conceive on our own, and we had our son in December of 2020. So he's my double rainbow baby. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, we did reach out just to, like I said, to find out. I needed answers. For me, I needed to know, why did this happen? How could this happen? And is there anything that, may happen in the future
Yeah.
once we start to try again? But everything came back and everything was perfectly normal. So there still weren't those answers that I was looking for.
Yeah. Would you say that you are now comfortable with not having the answers? I mean, because you do actually have the answer. It's just not the one that you wanted to blame yourself for, right? Or
Right.
you wanted some scientific answer, which I'm pretty sure there is out there, but you
Hmm.
wanted a scientific answer, you wanted a physical answer, you wanted someone to tell you basically it was your fault or it wasn't your fault, or this is what happened, or what have you. So, with that, would you say that you're comfortable with the answer that you now have?
I'm comfortable that I'm not blaming myself. I know that it wasn't something that I did or didn't do.
Hmm.
So I have released that for myself. So
Okay.
I'm comfortable to say that it wasn't my fault. It wasn't something that I did do, or it wasn't something that I didn't do. So I am comfortable and have moved on from that self blame that I
Uh-huh.
wanted to just, put something on it where, okay, I can say this is what happened, but I'm
Yeah.
no longer blaming myself for this, for what happened to me. So
Yeah.
I've come to a place of healing where I'm not blaming myself anymore.
Yeah. And now that's one facet to it, but then we have the other side, because now you start having babies, you start getting pregnant, and you're carrying full term. And just in that process of you getting pregnant, what was that experience like? I can only imagine there was so much anxiety involved with that.
So much anxiety,
Mhm.
fear. I was afraid to be happy. I was, almost afraid to even tell anyone about it because I didn't want to then have to go back and say, we're no longer pregnant. There were a lot of emotions behind that. I
Yeah.
wanted to be happy, but I was also scared at the same time.
Yeah.
I was nervous. Every doctor's appointment that I went to, just praying before you get in the door that everything is okay. It was every time you go to the bathroom, you're looking to make sure, there isn't blood, right? Because
Right.
that's what happened to me in the ectopic pregnancy. So it was those things that went throughout the entire pregnancy. And I don't think that ever, and I remember getting one of those handheld baby Dopplers where I could listen
Okay.
to the heartbeat myself, like just to make
Yeah.
sure there's a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And it sounds crazy, in the moment or saying it out loud, but those are the things that, a woman who has experienced pregnancy loss, they go
Mhm.
through.
Yeah.
Even pregnancy after a loss. You're happy, but you're scared all at the same time.
Yeah. Did you, how was your support system during your pregnancy?
I, I definitely had, support of my husband, our parents, both my in-laws, my parents, my friends. A lot of people I didn't really share
Mhm.
the previous losses because I wasn't really comfortable with talking about it. I still wasn't comfortable with talking about it, even though I was expecting, our son who was born in December.
Mhm.
So, I really started opening up probably more so like 2021 after my son was born, because for
Okay.
me, I needed him to be here.
Yeah.
I needed to feel comfortable. I couldn't talk about it while I was still pregnant because I knew there's a possibility, right? That,
Mhm.
maybe the pregnancy may not continue. So I didn't really fully breathe until after my son was born.
Okay. And you have how many babies now?
Two,
Two. Okay. Would you say that you experienced the same amount of anxiety with both?
absolutely. Because of my past history, when I became pregnant, I had to go in for early scans and, those blood draws early on. So they were tracking me from the very beginning of my pregnancy. So once I, got a positive pregnancy test, I had to call my OBGYN and they brought me in to do those early scans just to make sure the baby implanted in the right place. And it's not another ectopic. So it was still a very, very scary moment, even though I've already, had a successful pregnancy. The second pregnancy was just as scary.
Yeah. I mean, because every time is a chance. You're taking a chance, you're taking a risk,
Hmm.
and then it also allows you to know like how mysterious the body is.
Right.
The body is doing its own things. It's that's when you really understand like it's a little bit outside of me, especially when you know that you're doing all the right things to make sure that everything is intact. And it's like your body just says, hey, not this
Yeah.
time, or let's go somewhere else, right?
Right.
So with that, um, because you suffered, we're going to say like three losses, right? In
Hmm.
different ways. Well, actually four in different ways. So we had the ectopic, we had your fallopian tube, we had aunt, and then we had the miscarriage.
Yes.
If you sit back and we pick them apart, can you tell me how you grieved differently or how the grief felt in each of those instances? Was it different?
I would say yes. So for me, the ectopic, because it was so traumatic, and it was a baby that we wanted,
Yeah.
um, and it was a part of me, even if it was only for a short period of time. This was a wanted baby, and it was a part of me.
Yeah.
Losing my left fallopian tube, for me that was scary because I'm like, okay, well, I know there's a possibility that you can still get pregnant with just one, but what if? And I kept, the what ifs in my mind. So just losing that part of me, um, I don't even know how to. It's like losing a part of yourself, because
Yeah.
as a woman, as a female, these are all parts that you need that go together to have a baby. So losing that, I felt like I was losing a part of me as well.
Okay.
With my aunt, like I said, she was almost like a second mom to me. But I feel like the pregnancy losses, because I felt like it was a part of me. I was growing something on the inside of me that felt more heavy.
Yeah.
Um, and then with my aunt, I could pinpoint what it was. It was cancer, so we
Okay.
knew what it was.
You have
Uh,
the answer.
I had the answer,
Hmm.
so I could prepare myself. I was there up until, the day or two before she took her last breath.
Hmm.
Um, when she was going into hospice, I, all of my family's in Virginia. I'm in Atlanta, and she
Okay.
waited for me to drive the 8 hours before she told them to take her. She was ready to go to hospice, and she waited for me.
Yeah.
And we all went together as a family. So I was there up until the few days before she took her last breath.
Yeah.
But I had an answer with that. I knew what it was. With the pregnancy losses, there wasn't an answer, so I grieved harder because there wasn't a why.
Yeah. And it wasn't even a life that had gotten to have a chance, right? And so
Hmm.
your aunt, even though, even if they're 90 years old, it's still a hurtful thing when someone passes away, right?
Hmm.
And I'm not, how old was your aunt?
57.
Okay, so she was young,
Hmm.
she was still young, still had a lot of life ahead of her.
Hmm.
And at the same time, she lived significantly longer than your babies had gotten a chance to.
Right.
And so when we think about that process in the grief, it's like you just it just all seems a little unfair,
Hmm.
right? And then you just kind of think like, well, if this person lived to 57 and this child only lived to not even come into the world, it throws you up in the air when it comes to your faith, when it
Hmm.
comes to understanding what is God really doing in the world, with me. And I know that you are a faith-based person. How did that affect your relationship with God?
Wow. I've always been a very spiritual, a very religious person, and I still am. But goodness, was it so hard in those moments to continue to trust God, because I'm like, why me, God? Why am I going through this not once, but twice with the pregnancy losses? And I just had a long talk with him. For a while I was angry.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't know how to pray about it in the beginning. Um, but I knew I had to push through because I knew that he wouldn't put more on me than I could bear.
Yeah.
And I started going through scriptures, and I started to pray. And through my church they had like an online site where you can enter prayers for people. So like I said, I couldn't talk about it to anyone. I didn't feel like I could talk about it, so I would just put my name on the prayer list, but I would do it. I wouldn't put my last name or anything like that. I just didn't want people to know because I wasn't comfortable talking about it. But I would find different like prayer lists where I could just insert my name, where someone
Yeah.
out there could pray for me,
Yeah,
because
just
I
help me
knew
somewhere, right?
right, somebody
Yeah.
else pray for me, because maybe my prayers are not going through, because this has happened not once but twice.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
I knew that God would not put more on me than I could bear, and I just kept going back to scriptures. And um, Proverbs 3:5-6 is my favorite scripture, and I just kept going back through scriptures where that's all I knew to do. Um, and I knew that at the end of all of this, he would turn, those ashes into something beautiful for me.
Definitely. And, talk about not receiving answers, right? Because one of the most frustrating things is talking to God and wanting answers.
Hmm.
Getting answers from man is one thing, getting answers from books or something else, getting answers from all these different, whatever we want to try to get the answers from.
Hmm.
But sometimes when God is silent with those answers, and or we're not hearing what we want to hear, or what our humanistic mind and thought process is like, this is sufficient.
Hmm.
That is that's hurtful. It's
it
hurtful and
is. It's like,
hard.
I know you hear me, God. Like,
Yeah.
I know you hear me, but I'm not hearing anything back. I'm
Mhm.
not, I know you hear me. But I just knew because of my faith that he would never leave me, nor would he forsake me.
Yeah. And that's
So,
that aspect of be still and know that I am God, right?
yes.
Like you're not always going to have the answers. You're not going to you'll eventually figure out some of it, you
Hmm.
know. You'll eventually figure out why it happened the way that it happened. You may
Right.
not figure out the detail of what made it happen, but at
Mhm.
least it's the okay, this is how my life started to unfold. This is what it propelled me into. This is the destiny that it led me into. This is my track, my journey that God wanted me to be on. So this is, you know, so things like that start to unravel. But when you're in the thick of it, it's like, you know, do I have to be the guinea pig?
Right.
You know?
Exactly. Because I surely was. I'm like, okay, God, like, I don't know, but now I can see where this has led me. And I am on, this is my purpose.
Yeah.
My pain was turned into purpose.
Yeah.
And I feel like I am, you know, an advocate for women that are on their healing journey after pregnancy loss. And journaling is what brought me through. And
Yeah.
that's my hope is, with my journals, I can help the next woman who's on her healing journey. So I truly believe what happened in 2019 and 2020 was meant to happen for me to be able to help the next person through my journey.
Yeah. Now that you work in, well, you're trekking upon helping others in this situation, and it's still kind of fresh for you. It's still kind
Mhm.
of fresh on your mind. And so how does that impact you while you're working with other ladies?
So right now I am, working with someone through the program, and I didn't know how having that conversation. She wanted to know my story, and I hadn't really had anyone ask, what's your story?
Yeah.
So to go down that path again, it was tough. It was almost like frog in throat moment where
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, I haven't had to think about it over all of these years. So it was a tough time to get through it with
Yeah.
her, but I think it was even more healing for me to talk it out loud, um, because it had been a while of me revisiting those moments. It was
Yeah.
traumatic for me. So to revisit those moments, I can play it over and over in my head like it just happened yesterday.
Yeah.
That's how traumatic it was for me. So for someone to ask, what's my story, and for me to go down that path, that journey again, it did bring up some emotions.
Yeah.
It took me to a
What
place that I didn't know was still there.
yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that place?
Yeah, it was a place of sadness, and once again, just the why. Still wanting to know, like, why did it happen, even though I was past that point and I knew I wasn't blaming myself anymore, but just walking back through that journey, recounting, from the moment I got to the hospital even down to what I was wearing. I
Yeah.
can remember every single piece of it like it just happened yesterday.
Yeah.
So for me it was like, wow, am I truly past this point? Because I
Hmm.
can remember it like piece by piece, moment by moment, word from word, what was spoken to me by the doctors, by the nurses. I can replay it in my head as if it just happened yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that, in the detail of that, what have you noticed are some of your triggers?
Hmm. I would say for me, a trigger right now, and I have a necklace that I wear. It's an angel wings, and I
Mhm.
had the dates engraved on. on the angel wing, so 326 of 2019. And I don't wear it because I'm afraid to lose it. And for me, losing that means it takes me back to losing that
Yeah.
pregnancy. So I don't wear it. I do keep it in a keepsake box. So I pulled it out one day, and as I'm looking at it, it brought up so many emotions, and that was a trigger for me
Mm.
holding that necklace because I don't take it out often. Um, Usually I take it out and I wear it on that day. So
Yeah.
March 26th. So this year, March 26th, I'll be wearing my necklace. Um, but that was a trigger for me because I don't touch it often. I don't see it often. It's in a keepsake box. So for me, that was a trigger um, currently. Now, I would
Yeah.
say during, you know, the weeks and the months after, the triggers were, seeing someone else pregnant
Hmm.
or, when I went to therapy, the therapist that I met with, um, I walk in and my therapist is pregnant.
Yeah, I wanted you to get into that because that was
I'm
that was crazy. Yeah.
like, is this a prank? Like, I know they know why I'm here
Yeah.
because, I did an intake and whatnot over the phone. So I'm like, I know they know the reason that I'm coming to see a therapist. And I walk in and she is pregnant. And she was very apologetic, willing to, immediately change and have someone else meet with me. But I felt a connection with her, so I did decide to stick with her because I did feel a connection with her, and she was very helpful. But yeah, my first meeting with my therapist, and I mean, it's out there. It's like it's a
Yeah.
full pregnancy. You can tell it just walking in the room, and I'm like, wow. So
Yeah.
that was definitely triggering for me
Yeah.
to walk into my first appointment and my therapist is pregnant.
Yeah. And
Um,
that's one of those things of, God, are you kidding me?
mhm,
But also one of those things where God is just kind of telling you like, I got you.
mhm,
It's you're this is something that you can't run from. This is something I don't want you to run from because it's a part of this journey, right? And I
mhm.
need you to kind of face this so that I could move you on to where I need you to get to. And
Right.
those are those things where it's like, God, you could have did it a different way.
Absolutely. Another trigger, I used to travel quite a bit for work. And I remember going through the airport, going through TSA, and we get to the end where you're, collecting all of your belongings. And I just remember there's a lady in front of me, and she has a baby in one of the carriers. And she's looking around, and I can tell she's looking around because she needs, an extra hand. She needs some
Yeah.
help. And she has her baby, and I'm right behind her. And I am just praying to God, please, God, do not let this lady ask me to hold her baby
Yeah.
because she was looking. You can tell she's looking.
Yeah.
And I just remember just praying so hard, and I'm just picking up all of the stuff and making myself look like I'm not helpful right now because I have stuff in my hand.
Yeah.
And I just knew that if she would have asked me to hold this baby, I would have immediately just lost it. I would have probably, just cried, or I don't know. I just knew that if she would have asked me, I would not have been able to handle that.
Yeah.
And I just remember just praying so hard, please, God, do not let her ask me to hold this baby. So there was an older couple in front of her, and she asked her to hold the baby.
Okay. Yeah. And you also, I believe, was it on your vacation? You were telling me about how the little boy was kept coming to your husband.
Yes. So it was a week after I had had the ectopic surgery and the pregnancy surgery. And so I got clearance from the doctor that we could go on our trip. We already had this vacation planned to go to Maui. So she said, go ahead and go. And I just remember we were sitting at a table. It was a dinner. We were at dinner and there was a show going on. And it was this little boy. And he just kept smiling and just coming up to my husband. And it was almost like a game of, kind of peekaboo or tag, where he would come
Yeah.
up and run away and come up and run away. And in the moment, I just remember going to the bathroom, and I cried so hard in the bathroom. And I'm getting teary eyed just thinking about it. I just remember crying so hard in this bathroom. Um, and I'm like kind of covering my mouth because, I'm a public bathroom. But I completely lost it in that moment.
Yeah. And what do you think that that was coming from?
It was fresh. I knew it was, the surgery had
Yeah.
just happened a week prior. So, we're
Okay.
just a week away, or a week from, losing our first, through the ectopic from the ectopic pregnancy.
Yeah.
So it was fresh. It was fresh for
Yeah.
me. But I thought, maybe if we go on this vacation, I can clear my mind of everything. And this cute little boy just keeps coming up to my husband, and I couldn't handle it. I couldn't
Yeah.
handle
How
it.
did your husband react to that?
Um, I think he was, trying to be friendly to the baby and to the kid, and, kind of going back and forth and playing with him. That's why he kept coming back, because it's almost like a game of, you run
Hmm.
up and they peekaboo, and the kid will run back and come back. So I don't think he knew in the moment, like, why I removed myself from the table.
Okay.
I said, I'm going to the bathroom, and I went to the bathroom, and I just completely lost it, in the bathroom stall. And I came back, I got myself together, and I came back as if, nothing had ever happened.
Yeah. And you made a statement about how you would smile through the pain,
Hmm.
and how you made it a habit of really not showing your emotion, not showing, you were silent about it. You were
Hmm.
silently suffering.
Hmm.
And you had your time, and then you get your face together and you were back on and you put your
Hmm.
show back on. And that had to be seemed to be maybe a very, very lonely moment or moments for you.
Absolutely. I tried my best to be as strong as I could be. Um, so, like I said, I'm in Hawaii, and, I'm smiling, and in my pictures, I'm smiling, and we're having a great time. But I'm fighting these emotions
Yeah.
internally, where I'm like, I want to try to take myself away from everything that happened, but deep down, I'm losing it on the inside. But I'm smiling through the pain. I don't want anyone to worry about me. I'm that type of person. I don't want people to, worry about me. And I'm okay.
Yeah.
I have that, type of personality is, I'm fine, or I'm okay. But really, deep down, I'm not.
Yeah. I
Uh,
think we need to start calling that a syndrome,
mm,
because
absolutely.
that everyone has that
Hmm.
you are that sort of person who, you don't want to inconvenience anyone, you don't want people in your business,
Right.
or you're not trying to face anything. So I'm okay. I'm
Hmm.
okay.
I'm
It's
okay.
fine. It's all
Hmm.
it is what it is, and it's just like, and you're breaking on the inside, right?
Hmm.
So, with that being said, how did your grief or your navigating through differ from your husband?
Like I said, he grieved in his own time. He was very supportive, there for me, making sure I was okay. Um, and I don't think he truly grieved until our first son was born.
Okay.
Um, he would cry a lot, just holding him.
Yeah.
And I think it reminded him of, this is what we lost, not once, but twice. And now I get to hold my baby.
Yeah.
So in those first few weeks, he grieved in his own time, and I understand people grieve in their own time.
Yeah.
But I think it truly hit him once we had our son, and
Yeah.
once we were able to hold our son. That's when I think everything just kind of came all together for him.
Yeah. Yeah. And would you say at that time it bonded you guys closer now that he kind of had an understanding of what you were feeling?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, just, the suffering in silence for me is because I didn't feel like anyone truly understood
Mhm.
what I was going through. And if you hadn't experienced it yourself, then you don't really know how to put an emotion behind it because it didn't happen to you.
Right.
Um, so while he was there, he was supportive uh, this entire time. I don't think he knew how to put any emotion behind it.
Yeah.
So, he grieved in his own time. And I think it was when we had our son is when he went through his stage.
Yeah. Yeah. So now we know and we come to understand how grief can, the loss, and then going through the grieving process and trying to figure out how am I supposed to work this out? How am I supposed to cope? How am I supposed to function? You came into the idea of writing your journals. And this then propelled you to do it for other women. So tell us about your journals and this whole project that you have going on with them. And hold on, we don't only have the journals. We have boxes. So tell us about your baby boxes
Oh my goodness.
or your mommy boxes.
With my journals, I have a pregnancy loss journal. It's called Held in My Heart. And I have a grief journal, Joy Comes in the Morning. So I wanted to put together, a care package for women who may have, had a pregnancy loss. These are self care items where, this is what I would have wanted back then with my own loss. So I wanted to put something together just to let them know that, you're not alone. There's someone out here thinking of you. Here's some self care items for yourself to help you get through those moments. So I had the idea and I had started kind of gathering things for it. And I don't know why I kept waiting. I kept procrastinating on it because I didn't feel like I was ready until a close friend of mine experienced a second trimester loss.
Okay.
And that got me going to get everything together. And that was one of my first packages that I sent out.
Yeah.
So it was almost that push that I needed, that I know this is needed. This is needed for those women that are out there where they feel like they're suffering, in silence or alone. And these are some of the things that I wish I would have had during those moments where I'm going through my own grieving process. These are
Yeah.
some of their warm socks, or um, there's a scented like shower steamers, or just something self-care items. These are some of the things that I wish I had. So those are some of the items that's in my care package. Is my held in my heart pregnancy loss box, and it's my journal as well that's included in there. It's a guided prompt journal. There's affirmations. So for me, this is what would have helped me during
Yeah.
that time. So it is my hope that it will help the next person in
Yeah.
their healing journey.
Yeah. How did it feel building that box for the first time? Was that a trigger for you as well?
It was, like I said, these are some of the things that I wish I would have had, right? But I didn't open up to people. I didn't talk about it, or even know that that was a thing, like
Yeah.
that you could get, care package for someone who's lost a baby or experienced a pregnancy loss. That wasn't something that I knew people talked about. So I didn't know that that was a thing. So building this box, it brought up those emotions that this is what I this is what I needed.
Yeah.
This is what I needed. So for me, I put in uh, the love that I felt that I needed back then.
Yeah.
These are the self care items that would have been helpful for me back then. So that was the thought behind it. Is this is what I would have needed back then, and I'm hoping to, be able to pass this down to the next mom who is experiencing the same thing.
Yeah. And also too what you need in order to continue your healing process, right?
Hmm.
Because a lot of the times we procrastinate on doing something, because we don't want to face those feelings,
Right.
because making those feelings normalize it just, you feel that you're going to go into this tunnel that you're never going to come out of. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like you keep reliving and you keep reliving, right? And a lot of the times when you face that's not necessarily the case, because once you exercise yourself to it, say for instance, like your necklace too. I
Mm-hmm.
know we talked about that a little bit, like, because of so much emotion comes from it. It's like I'd rather keep it over here
Right.
and not face it until I have to face it than to look at this every day and be reminded, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Um, and I think that the way that we have to learn to incorporate our loss, incorporate our grief, is bringing it into our everyday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because it's the loss and the we can't get back that hurts us so much. But
Right.
when we learn that it's okay that this did happen, this is a reality of the loss of everything that's happening, and it's like the more that you accept it and know that it's there, acknowledge the babies, acknowledge the time. And it's like, but because you are a part of me, you've always
Right.
been a part of me, you will always be a part of me, right? And I think that just that incorporation. So, saying all that to say, you doing your boxes is God's way also of helping you to continue to heal. Because 2019 and 2020, yeah, it's 2025 now, but that's not a long time, you
Right.
know, especially in your mind and in your body and in the
Mm-hmm.
processing, So that is a way of you continually building up your strength to heal from, or to, I mean, because you never heal from grief. So it's like all of these words. I think I'm just going to start a grief dictionary or something. All of these words just like irritate me. I'm like, there's no death anniversary, healing, all of these things. It's like these are wrong words to use for
Right.
grief.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, just helping you along your journey, and helping you to incorporate it and not hide from it because of
Mm-hmm.
the pain, right?
Right.
Yeah. Um, Anything that's coming up here soon that you are going to, any new projects, any new goals that's coming up for you?
Yeah. So for me, I recently a certified grief coach. So I just recently,
Awesome.
and with that, it is my hope that I am able to hold workshops or support groups
Mhm.
for those women that are on their journey.
Yeah.
So that's a goal of mine. And like I said, just with my care packages, to get that out there, I've sent two so
Okay.
far. I've sent two. So it is my hope that these care packages will bring a level of comfort to
Yeah.
someone to know that they're not alone. And it's my hope that my journal held in my heart, that is truly what got me through those tough times. Journaling is so powerful and it's so helpful. So it is my hope that I can get this in the hands of those women that are going through this grief journey,
Yeah.
that have experienced a pregnancy loss, and they may not feel that they have someone to reach out to or to talk to, but I hope just through my journal they can find some type of healing or to process those emotions that they can't speak out loud.
Yeah. And I know that when we had met for the overview, we were talking about the play on words, right? And it's not the I hope. The grief and the loss is what says I hope, because I don't want to get too excited about that. I don't want to
Right.
lean in on that too much, because we know that life is a mystery, right?
Yes.
But coming out of that space and saying, I believe that it will. I believe that my journals are going to do X, Y, and Z. I believe that my boxers are going to do, and I believe that I'm going to touch lives of these women who have,
Absolutely.
experienced this, right? As a grief coach. So making that play on words and just and believing, because loss makes it so hard for you to believe,
Yes.
because oh, the possibilities, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's it is the possibilities of not knowing what's next, the
Right.
possibilities of not of just being in the dark a lot, and we're just going through life just hoping that we
Hmm.
make it the next day, right?
Right.
So having that, it's another exercise of being able to believe in something again, you
Yes.
know. Yeah. Anything else you want to share with us?
I think that that's it. That is my story, and I'm just thankful for the opportunity to tell my story, and I will continue to tell my story because I know it will help the next woman who's going through the same thing when she, may feel that she doesn't have anyone to talk to, or she may feel alone. But I hope my story will
Yeah.
help the next woman who is going through a pregnancy loss. And I know that my story is it's powerful. Um, God has brought me a long way,
Mhm.
and my even though my faith was tested in that moment, He has brought me out on the other side, and my story is a testimony of God's grace
Yeah.
and of God's favor.
Yeah.
And I will continue to tell my testimony every chance I have.
Awesome. Now tell us how we can get in touch with you and how we can find your books, your journals, and your boxes.
Yes, I am on Instagram at j_journals. My website is jandjjournals.com. So you can follow me on Instagram. You can visit my website. The boxes as well as my journals are on the website. If you follow me on Instagram, the link is in my bio as well.
Awesome. And I will also have her information under her bio under the podcast as well. Well, Shannon, thank you so much for coming into the shadow box and sharing your story and bringing awareness to this silent grief that so many women experience. And I thank you for just being courageous and brave enough to express it and to let us into your world. And just noticing that there are other people that are knocking on that door that want to be in your world. Because they actually are. They just didn't know that there was a door to enter into it, right?
Right.
So I thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
For everyone else, thank you guys for coming into the shadow box and listening with us and taking away these tidbits, these educational tidbits too, getting some resources that you are in need of when you are having these sorts of experiences, right? So we are taking away the silence and we're bringing some expression and we are letting you know that there is a door that is open for you